We have a massive Lakers trade update to go over today as a Lakers trade is imminent following a massive and shocking new report that has dropped revealing not only Rob Pelinka's plans going forward into the next coming hours and days, but an NBA report that has dropped that we have never seen in the history of the NBA. You're going to want to stay tuned for that in this episode, as well as a bunch of other updates, including one from Dave McMenamin that is very intriguing. This is going to be a video you want to stay till the end for. And if you're enjoying the daily content, multiple videos a day here surrounding the Lakers, you guys have been absolute beasts with the support lately. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys again for your continued support. We're getting closer and closer to the big goal of 20,000 subscribers. Folks, lots to go over today. This is insane. Now, I've been covering, of course, in the channel, the Al Horford news. Of course, they signed DeAndre Ayton yesterday as well. But late into the night, into the early morning yesterday, we got some big information surrounding a trade that not only changes a lot for the Lakers and has massive implications, but it is something we have never seen before. And let's dive right into it here. League sources tell The Athletic that the Rockets and Suns are working on expanding the Kevin Durant trade into a deal that would involve a league record 7 teams. Other teams involved in negotiations at the moment include the Hawks, the Nets, the Warriors, the Lakers, and the Timberwolves, league sources say. And this kind of came out and a league record 7 teams. We have never seen a trade happen with 7 teams involved before, and this is absolutely insane. It is quite frankly absurd, and the Lakers are named in this, and this has sparked speculation. It has fueled a ton of reports, a ton of rumors, and of course, now the Lakers are involved in a what seemingly is going to be a sign and trade situation. But of course, you're probably asking yourself now, what does this mean going forward? And there is a lot of different things that have started to come out. Now, some are complicated, some are less complicated. And reports started to kind of venture into late last night surrounding, specifically from Dave McMenamin, surrounding what this could mean. And let's dive into all of that now. And let's start with this here. So, according to Brett Siegel, places that make sense for the Lakers to be involved. This is before we dive into the Dave McMenamin tweet and report. KD to Houston, Green and Brooks to Phoenix. Dorian Finney-Smith sign and trade to Houston from LA. Capella sign and trade to Houston from Atlanta. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker to Atlanta from Minnesota. So in this, hypothetical, you're getting a sign and trade from Dorian Finney-Smith to Houston from LA. Now, if that is the case, and of course there's still a lot of options here, then of course you assume the Lakers are going to get somebody like what's rumored out to be Cam Whitmore, which is a very intriguing possibility here, right? And it's a very interesting one. And that was kind of what was started to fuel the speculation for a little bit. But then you think back to the video I made yesterday about the Lakers actively pursuing a backup center. Now, they have a $5 million offer on the table for Al Horford, but also they are actively pursuing a backup center via trade in case that falls through and he goes to the Warriors. So that started to fuel speculation about what's going on. And then Dave McMenamin comes out on ESPN or NBA Today and goes and says that basically feel free to, go and watch the whole clip. But essentially what he says is that there is a deal being negotiated right now that Dave McMenamin knows but doesn't know the player between the Lakers and this certain team. And what is happening is the Lakers are negotiating with this team, but this team is also making another trade. And the trade that is currently being negotiated between the Lakers and said team is for a center. You see this here, so I assume this expanding KD trade is what Dave was alluding to here. Wondering if it could be Daron Sharp, Onyeka Okongwu, or Nick Richards. Now, there's a lot of different options here. Of course, Daron Sharp recently signed, and Onyeka Okongwu is a part of the Atlanta Hawks, who, funny enough, in all of this are one of the named teams. So you're at a point now where there's named teams, there's different players, and you have Dave McMenamin coming out and saying the Lakers are trying to weigh different options for this center, which we don't exactly know who that is, though the further you go on, you can kind of start to pick it out, either from the Hawks, the Suns, or the Nets. The more you look at it, the more it kind of starts to become clear who would this be. And my assumption is going to be Nick Richards, but it could really be either Nick Richards or a guy like Daron Sharp. I don't think it's going to be Onyeka Okongwu, but at the end of the day, it could just be. Now, of course, we've seen the Lakers linked to Nick Richards in the past as well. We've seen the Lakers linked to a bunch of different, centers. But in this big framework now, a trade is not only imminent, of course, because the KD trade is going to happen. Whether or not the Lakers are involved is still technically up in the air, but it's seemingly, according to the Athletic, going to be a record-breaking 7-team trade. And, there is some scenarios where the Lakers, just, I guess it could be cash, or it could be a convoluted area with the Adu Thiero trade where they're taking on just the Adu Thiero and the, Brooklyn's pick or something like that. I would assume this is part of a bigger deal. And you can see here, like we look at the starting lineup, they need a two-way wing for sure, which again, they're going to be working on the trade market, but they also need a center. And again, you can see this here. You can look at the teams, kind of gives you a clearer view. There are 7 teams, or rather, these are the 7 teams who are going to be involved in the KD trade. We're most likely making a DFS to Houston sign and trade deal. Good chance we get Nick Richards out of this, but what if Rob can get a hold of Nick Claxton? Now, I mean, Nick Claxton, I don't think is going to be a part of this deal. I think it would make a lot more sense for Nick Richards to be a part of this deal from the Suns. But again, you're looking at the teams involved. The Suns have Nick Richards, the Nets have Nick Claxton, the Hawks have a Nneka Okongwu, and there's a bunch of different ways now with all of these teams involved that a center could come to LA. And you pair that with the fact that Dave McMenamin has continuously reported how they are actively involved in talks for a center. And that, stemmed back to yesterday when they said they are still active in these talks. And then Brett Siegel came out and said that the Lakers yesterday were going to be actively involved in a trade for Nick Richards, Robert Williams, guys of that nature. And of course, Nick Claxton to a degree, but not really as much now. Since then, they have, of course, signed DeAndre Ayton to that contract. So you would assume that takes them out of the bigger guys. But out of the reports that Brett Siegel came out from said yesterday and what Dave McMenamin has been saying both yesterday and into today, you're at a point now where not only are you looking at a backup center, which is, of course, there's backup centers on all these 3 teams. In theory, Nneka Okongwu is kind of the higher end. But like Nick Richards makes the most sense for this team and has continuously been reported to be going to the Lakers. And you can see this here, incoming Cam Whitmore and Nick Richards to the Lakers from Shams. I mean, there is a possibility where they get both. I don't want to get my hopes too high in the sense of like a blockbuster deal. I think the most likely outcome here is something like a Nick Richards trade to LA. Though again, there is still the possibility where the Lakers are very minorly involved in this. And it's just, they're not going to get some B center. They're going to get some, a part of the Edu Thiero trade. However, and again, when I say Edu Thiero trade, I'm specifically talking about how the Lakers went from 55 down to 36 in 2 separate deals for cash considerations with teams involved in this deal as well. Now, you look at the starting 5, you look at what they need. They desperately need a two-way wing. Like this alluded to, they desperately need a center, a backup center at that. And we know specifically, if you've been watching my videos for the past few days, they are actively involved in a trade for a backup center. And we assume they're going to fill out that two-way wing either via, free agency with their biannual exception, or they're going to go ahead and take that biannual exception and go ahead and use it for a potentially, we assume a center or a two-way wing. Like whatever they don't use the biannual exception for, they're either going to use it for a wing and trade for a center, or trade for a wing and use it for a center, right? That's pretty clear. And this has really sparked, again, Nick Richards has been the number 1 guy. And you look at his stats here, very impressive for what he is. If Rob Pelinka can land a backup center of Nick Richards, not only would it fit the team very well, but we're talking about, of course, Al Horford, how the Lakers have offered him a deal. I like the fit of Nick Richards alongside DeAndre Ayton more than I do DeAndre Ayton and Al Horford for a couple of reasons. One, Nick Richards fits the scheme better for Luka Doncic. I don't think Al fits necessarily what Luka brings. Of course, the thing that Al brings that none of these guys bring that they have and have been negotiating with or in talks with, according to multiple reports, Nick Richards, that is, and Rob Pelinka by trade, is the three-point shot. That's what Al Horford brings. But what Nick Richards brings is athleticism, defense, and a lob threat. And that is something that reportedly from multiple different reports, including Dave McMenamin, Jake Fisher, all these different guys, Trevor Lane, they've been saying that, hey, the Lakers are actively looking for a center that can be young, be athletic, be a rebounder, be a lob threat. You pair that, and that lines up perfectly with Nick Richards. So things are really starting to pick up here, folks. And as we start to see and as things start to unravel, this trade that is going to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest in NBA history, at least as it pertains to trading, players to teams, the number of teams involved, it's going to get wild because you look at some of these teams involved. The Warriors are trying to get Al Horford. There's rumblings about the Warriors being in negotiations right now for a Kuminga Malik Monk swap, which is also crazy with the Kings, who of course aren't involved in these deals. And we know the Atlanta Hawks have been active. The Brooklyn Nets have been very active with the Lakers for a while. Think about Nick Richards. Think about Nick Claxton. Nick Claxton for a while was their number 1 target. Ultimately, I'm pretty happy with the way the DeAndre Ayton stuff worked out. And if you've been watching my videos for a while, I've been a preacher of DeAndre Ayton since he initially became available in talks a month ago before they thought about buying him out. So it's going to be interesting, but folks, things have really picked up and folks, things have really took an interesting turn and we're going to keep you up to date every step of the way. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys for watching. You guys are beasts. Cheers.